There are Christmas you remember, and Christmas you wish you could erase forever. I used to think that was just a cliché. Until that fateful night. When the garden lights first flickered on, I thought I'd created a perfect moment, but a single sentence slipping through the window shattered everything in my chest like snow sliding off an old roof. I heard it clearly, as if God himself wanted me to finally face the truth I'd been trying to deny. I don't want to spend Christmas with that loser. It's embarrassing to even call her my sister. I froze, still holding the string of lights I hadn't yet hung on the maple tree in the backyard. That voice was unmistakable. It was Emma, my 29-year-old younger sister, an elementary school teacher. Always sweet in front of me, but clearly someone else when I wasn't around. The laughter that followed sliced cold into my chest. Let her pay for the renovations, then cut her off. That was my mother, Patricia, 62 years old, the woman who once told me that family was supposed to be the safest place on earth. I'm not sure how long I stood there, but when I finally snapped back, my hands were shaking so hard I dropped the light clips into the snow. None of them knew I was standing just outside the window. They assumed I was still in the kitchen preparing the prime rib I'd marinated for 3 days, hoping for a warm, peaceful evening together. I forced myself back inside without tears. The 2-story house in the Minneapolis suburbs, where I grew up and poured nearly all my savings into renovations, no longer felt warm. Under the soft yellow light hanging from the fireplace, the ones I'd carefully chosen on Amazon, discounted to $39.99. Everything looked warped and fake, like a stage where I was the forgotten extra. I used to think if I tried just a little harder, they would finally see me. I'm Ava, 36, a structural engineer, single, self-sufficient, never needing anything from anyone. And that's why they saw me as different. I paid for the summer trip to Oregon. I covered the $18,000 0 cents for the roof repairs after last year's storm. I bought Mom a new sofa and hired someone to refinish the entire first floor, but in return, I was just the failure, a faded shadow in a house they still dared to call a home. Silently, I wiped my hands on my apron and continued setting the table as if nothing had happened. The sound of my mother and Emma giggling in the living room pierced through the walls like sharp, tiny knives. All she does is manual labor. Who'd want to marry that? She'll probably die alone. I wanted to storm in and confront them, to scream why, but I knew it would only earn me the label of too sensitive. So I withdrew, quietly, elegantly, like nothing had been said. I stepped into the kitchen, scooped the cranberry sauce into a porcelain dish, took 3 deep breaths, and fixed the most practiced smile I could muster. Because that's what I was best at, pretending not to hear, pretending not to hurt, and still holding on to hope. Until there was no hope left. I used to believe that if I worked hard enough, gave enough, sacrificed enough, love would follow. Maybe that belief started when I was 12, watching Mom light candles for Emma's return from summer camp, completely forgetting that it was also my birthday. I quietly lit a single cupcake in my room and whispered to myself, "She's just busy." I whispered that excuse hundreds of times over the next 24 years. I never married, never had kids, never asked for anything, and that made me the perfect responsibility container for the whole family. I earned money. Mom called me every time the fridge broke, the roof leaked, or medical bills spiked. I always showed up, always paid, always smiled. Emma lost her job? I covered 3 months of rent. Mom wanted to upgrade to handcrafted ceramics? I ordered them, even if it meant eating instant noodles until payday. At first, I thought, maybe they're just not used to me being successful. Later, I thought maybe because I live alone, they assume I don't need love. But over time, I realized they never truly saw me as part of the family, just an A-team that could walk and talk. The morning after Christmas, I woke up early, as always. My eyes were puffy, but my hands kept working. I cleaned up the table, washed the wine-stained glasses, straightened the tilted tree. The others were still asleep upstairs. The party was over, and as always, I was the one cleaning up behind the scenes. The part that froze me to the bone wasn't the insults. It was my mother's calm demeanor while deceiving me in the very home I rebuilt from the foundation. That afternoon, while shopping for more baking ingredients, I ran into our neighbor, Mrs. Janice. "More cookies for the family, Ava? You're such a sweetheart. Your mom must be so lucky to have you." I didn't respond. My throat clenched shut. That evening, when Emma flashed the vintage-style Cartier necklace Bruce gave her, Mom looked at her with gleaming pride, while I faded into the background. I had barely set the cookie tray down when Mom said, "Ava, be careful not to get flour on the new silk tablecloth. It stains easily." That sentence hit harder than a slap. I wasn't a careless child. I was the one who ordered that exact tablecloth from a handcrafted store in Vermont. I washed it, pressed it, me. Everything started to come into focus under the white lights in the front yard. Every time I supported them, they treated it as an obligation. Every gift I gave, every act of help I offered, it was never named, never thanked. No hugs, no recognition. That night, I stood alone in the storage room, looking at the leftover wrapping paper, the gifts I had carefully prepared for each of them. Even Bruce, the one who once called my company a dead-end job for people with no vision. A cold, icy thought ran down my spine. I had painted an imaginary family in my mind, and now the truth was clear. They never loved me the way I thought they did. I didn't cry. There were no tears left to shed. Only a heavy, crushing feeling remained in my chest, as if every sacrifice I made over the past 3 decades was nothing more than the foolish trail of someone desperately seeking acceptance in the wrong place. I didn't speak, not because I was weak, but because I was counting each heartbeat. Fast, freezing, and stretched thin like a violin string about to snap. That night, after everyone had gone upstairs, I sat alone in the silent kitchen, lit only by the glow of the oven reflected on the granite floor. Mom had left her laptop open on the dining table. Part of me wanted to look away, but my hand touched the keyboard before reason could stop it. It asked for a password. I tried Emma's birth date. Incorrect. The name of our old cat? Also wrong. I closed my eyes and typed Ava 1987, my own birth year. The screen unlocked like a slap, straight to my sense of trust. The first email I saw was from Bruce, Emma's husband, sent to my mother, titled Asset Transfer Plan Updated Version. Not a single line mentioned my name. I was referred to as the construction handler, primary funder, non-legal resource. I read each line like someone watching their own blood being sold on paper. Attached was a spreadsheet, itemized renovation costs, $3,200, 0 cents for the roof, $2,500, 0 cents for the new heating system, $4,750, 0 cents for kitchen upgrades, totaling nearly $42,000, 0 cents. Each expense listed clearly, yet the ownership records were under Mom and Bruce's names. I was just a ghost. The name Ava did not exist. I scrolled further. A chat message appeared. Bruce, once the renovations are done, we'll have the house. She won't have any reason to stick around. My mom, Emma, deserves more. Ava is just temporary. She doesn't understand her place. My stomach twisted like I'd been punched, but I didn't stop. One name appeared repeatedly. Craig Monroe. That stopped me cold. Craig had been one of my father's closest friends. They went to college together. But ever since a business trip last year, Mom had been mentioning him more than usual, and in a different tone. I opened the email thread between her and Craig. "I miss the new kitchen. Thank you for making everything so beautiful. Once the asset transfer is done, we'll have it all. I can't wait any longer." An attachment popped up, a photo of my mother and Craig in my living room, his hand resting on her back in an unmistakably intimate way. The photo was taken the night I was out surveying a job site. I felt like I had vomited into my soul. I printed every email, screenshotted each message, saved it all to a USB drive, and hid it in my toolbox. Everything suddenly became clear. I had been reduced to a phase in their master plan, a smiling ATM who baked, fixed, and paid, but was never loved. The next morning, at breakfast, I gave it one last chance. I placed the cinnamon rolls on the table and asked casually, how's Craig doing these days?" Her hand froze mid-pour. Craig Monroe, Dad's old friend, the one who sent those white flowers?" She forced a stiff smile. "Oh, probably a mistake. I don't know, really." I took a bite, never taking my eyes off her. "Strange. He got the name and address right. Even wrote, 'Can't wait to live with you.'" Very poetic. The air froze for 3 seconds. Emma coughed. Bruce looked down at his phone, pretending to be busy. Mom said nothing. She knew I knew, but I wasn't done yet. Not yet. I still had the final card in my hand. And when I played it, this family would never be the same again. I used to think Christmas was a time for forgiveness, but this year, it became the starting point of a war. Not one of fists or yelling, but of precision, preparation, and a coldness I never knew I had. That evening, while the family watched their favorite old movie, I slipped away unnoticed into the shed, where I kept my tools, blueprints, and things far more important than any gift. I opened my laptop. A plan appeared, not a blueprint for a house, but a schematic for retaliation. Column A, every cent I'd spent over the last 3 years. Column B, the assets Mom and Bruce accidentally put under their names. Column C, evidence of my mother's relationship with Craig, including the photo of them holding hands in my father's bedroom. I swallowed the nausea. This wasn't the time to feel. The next morning, I took the day off and called my family attorney in Chicago, Mr. Jennings, the one who helped me during a past property dispute. After hearing my case, he paused for a moment, then spoke slowly and firmly. "Ava, what you have here isn't just evidence. It's a weapon, and if you plan to use it, strike once, hard and clean." I nodded, gripping the phone so tight my knuckles turned white. "I don't want to hurt anyone, but I won't let them rob me blind." That evening, I returned home as usual. I slid my phone into my pocket and checked the recording devices I'd already planted, one under the dining table, one behind the fireplace mantel, and one in the kitchen light fixture. Every word, every whisper, I captured. Carefully, without emotion. 3 days later, I installed a small hidden camera in Mom's office, disguised as a decorative frame. I was no longer playing the dutiful daughter. I had become the architect of truth. And this time, the project I was building was the collapse of a fantasy. Friday night, I sat with Mom in the kitchen, pretending to joke about Emma's upcoming birthday. She smiled, played the motherly part, but kept checking her phone. "Waiting for someone?" I asked lightly. "Just some boring accounting stuff," she replied. "Or maybe Craig." She froze for a beat, then laughed awkwardly. "Oh, Ava, don't be silly. Craig's just an old friend." I looked her straight in the eyes. "Old friends don't send white flowers that say counting the days to live with you." I didn't need to say more. I saw the blood drain from her face. She turned away, using the stew as an excuse. I knew she was scared, and I knew I had the reins now. That night I sat alone in my wood shop, surrounded by files, recordings, and meticulously labeled evidence. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. I drafted invitations for a special family meeting on Emma's birthday. Subject: estate update and asset restructuring discussion. Real purpose: lay it all on the table, no evasion, no mercy. At the bottom, I wrote, "Please arrive on time. This time, I'll be leading the meeting." As I sealed the last envelope, I smiled. Not from vengeance, but because, for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting to be accepted. I was taking back what was mine, with intelligence, evidence, and the cold strategy they taught me, the worst way possible. Emma's birthday fell on a Saturday. Bone-chilling cold, snow coating the porch roof. I got up at 5 a.m. Not to bake, but to finish building the stage for the final curtain. I wiped down the walnut dining table, the one I had built myself, every curve, every carved detail. At each seat I placed a glass, a silk napkin, and a sealed black envelope, each labeled with the recipient's name. In the center of the table I set a fully charged tablet. Its lock screen read, "Truth never needs permission to be heard." Mom was the first to appear. Red sweater, pearl earrings, bold lipstick. She paused, eyeing my setup, her brows slightly furrowed. "Eva, it's your sister's birthday, not a board meeting." I didn't look up, my voice was calm. "Good. She should know exactly what she's receiving, and from whom." She scoffed, then walked toward the kitchen. An hour later, everyone had arrived. Emma wore a body-hugging dress, grinning like the world revolved around her. Bruce followed behind with a brand-new fake Rolex, eyeing the house like it was already his. My father arrived last, holding a bottle of Italian wine and that same lukewarm smile he always wore. As soon as everyone sat down, I stood. "Before we cut the birthday cake, I'd like to share something. It won't take long." No one responded right away. Mom stared. Emma sighed quietly. Bruce raised an eyebrow, his hand already resting on his phone under the table. I turned on the tablet. The first audio file played. Emma's voice rang loud and clear. "I don't want to have dinner with that loser. All she does is bury herself in work. Who would marry her? Let her pay for the renovation, then dump her." Silence blanketed the room. I looked at each of them. Mom, Emma, Bruce, peeling back their secrets layer by layer. Then I played the next clip. Mom on the phone with Bruce. "Once Eva finishes the renovation, I'll transfer the ownership to Emma. She won't suspect a thing." Bruce lifted his hand from his phone. Emma turned away. Mom sat frozen, like a statue. I opened the envelope in front of my father and handed him copies of bank transactions. Proof that Mom had quietly withdrawn nearly $40,000, 0 cents of my contributions, from the family account, transferring it into an account under the name Craig Monroe. I didn't say a word. My father took the papers. His expression shifted with every line he read. "And this is the message exchange between Mom and Craig, your old friend." I slid the tablet to the center of the table. "Everything is almost done. Once Ava's out of the will, we'll finally have our life together. I can't wait any longer." My father looked straight at my mother. "Matricia, is this true?" She whispered, eyes glistening. "You don't understand. You were always in your office. I was lonely." I slammed my hand on the table. "So that's your excuse for stealing my work? For letting my sister call me a loser while you laughed at my kindness?" Bruce cut in, his tone cold. "Ava, you have no right to violate privacy." I turned to him, voice sharp as a blade. "And you had the right to provide legal counsel to strip me of homeownership? Don't forget, I recorded you too." Emma trembled. "You, you set us up?" "No, Emma, I just stopped pretending to be stupid." I stood tall and pulled a legal document from my bag. "This is a petition to halt all asset transfers. I've also filed a civil lawsuit. Every move you made will be dealt with under the law." My father said nothing. He pushed back his chair, stood quietly, and walked out of the room. As for me, I looked directly at the woman who gave birth to me and said softly, "This party is over. You can keep the cake. I'll keep my dignity." They stood like statues in a room stripped of every lie. I didn't look back. No need. The people I once called family were now just minor characters in a play I had ended with one brutal truth. I stepped outside, the wind sliced across my cheek, snow drifting onto my coat. I didn't feel pain, only lightness, like a mountain had been lifted off my chest. No one followed. No one called my name. Only the wooden door closed behind me, firm and final. The next day, I returned, said nothing, no greetings. I walked straight to the garage, the space I had rebuilt brick by brick, wall by wall, with my own hands. I gathered all my tools, blueprints, the hard drive with client files, tax records, and photos from my first projects. I packed each item as if wrapping up a past life, carefully, thoroughly, leaving nothing behind. On the wooden table, I left the old key, the one my mother once handed me, along with the words, "This house is ours." Now I knew that had never been true. I didn't leave a note. Not out of hatred, but because I owed myself the final silence. My new apartment was 15 minutes away, smaller but with windows overlooking the lake and ceilings high enough for me to build my own workshop. I arranged everything like laying the foundation of a new life for myself. In that quiet space, I began to feel free. The first message from my mother came 3 days later, at 1 a.m. "You can't do this, I'm your mother." I read it, set the phone down, and didn't respond. The next message was from Emma. "You can't throw away your family over a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding? I wanted to laugh. Instead, I took a screenshot and sent it straight to my lawyer. On the 5th day, Mom texted. "Craig cut contact. He went back to his wife. I have no one left. Don't treat me like a stranger." I typed exactly 8 words. "All communication must go through my attorney." Then I blocked her number. A few days later, Bruce sent an email suggesting a financial negotiation, implying I could drop the lawsuit if I agreed to cooperate. I forwarded it to my lawyer with a note. "No concessions. I want a restraining order." By the second week, the court order was approved. The restraining order against my mother Emma and Bruce officially took effect within a 100-foot radius. At the same time, my attorney began the process of recovering the financial contributions I had made based on the evidence I had already prepared. I wasn't seeking revenge. I just wanted to reclaim what they had dismissed, my effort, my time, and my trust. My father was the only one who stayed silent the longest. Until one late afternoon, he sent a short message. "I'm sorry for staying silent so long. I understand now. Can we meet?" I didn't answer right away. I thought about it for 3 days. Then I typed, "Come lunch, no talk about Mom, no apologies, just person to person." He agreed. We met at a small cafe near the lake. He sat across from me, hair grayer than I remembered, eyes sunken but showing something. "Eva." I didn't want to see it, not because I was blind, but because I was a coward. I placed my hand on the table, not angry, not pitying. "Do you see clearly now?" He nodded, eyes misty. "If you'll let me. I want to make things right. Not with words, with action." I made no promises, but I didn't walk away. And that was a new beginning. A shard of something left behind in the ashes, but the only shard worth keeping. My father came back into my life not with an apology, but with the eyes that once looked away, now finally facing the truth. That lunch, he sat across from me in the lakeside cafe, his hand slightly trembling as he held an espresso. No longer the poised university professor, just a father, full of regret and emptiness, facing the daughter he once didn't have the courage to protect. "Eva, I don't know where to begin." "Try the truth," I replied without hesitation. He looked at me for a long moment, then pulled out a folder. "I hired a private investigator. I couldn't believe I'd lived with that lie for so many years. Craig had been involved with your mother for over a decade." I didn't move. Every work trip, every time I left the house, they were together. Photos, emails, transaction logs, they all line up. "Craig didn't just take your mother from me. They planned to erase you from our lives." I swallowed hard. "So what do you plan to do with this truth?" He exhaled deeply. "I filed for divorce a month ago. After that dinner, your confrontation, that was the first time I realized Ava is no longer the daughter trying to prove herself. She's the only one in this family who's held onto her dignity." I looked out the window as light snow began to fall. I had waited years for those words, but now that they came, I didn't feel satisfaction, only exhaustion. He hesitated, then continued. I want to update my will. Everything will go to you. I have no one else. And I don't want anyone else. I turned back, my voice dry as dead wood. That's not necessary. Ava, I don't need a reward for doing what's right. Keep it. Use it to rebuild your life. He was quiet for a long time, then nodded slowly, like someone who'd been rejected but somehow forgiven. If you'll allow it, I want to stay in touch. Not to make up for the past, but because, in the end, you're the only person in this family I truly want to know better. I didn't answer right away, but I didn't leave. And maybe, for him, that was enough. 1 week later, my father sent me an email with a simple subject line. Craig, investigation update. Attached was a statement from an unfamiliar bank account, assets held in trust. In my mother's name. But the funds had been funneled through a law firm where Bruce served as advisor. I nearly dropped my phone. Bruce was deeper in this than I thought. He hadn't just helped Mom strip the house from me. He'd also set up a hidden fund to move assets before the divorce could finalize. I immediately sent the documents to my attorney. An hour later, he called back. Ava, we can push for criminal charges. This isn't civil anymore. This is organized financial fraud. I closed my eyes. Everything I had suspected was now unfolding in plain sight. Not just betrayal, collusion, exploitation. A crime wrapped in a family bow. My father called afterward. Ava, please, let me stand by you this time. Don't fight this alone. I said quietly. Fine, but promise me, no more looking the other way. His voice was rough. I've opened my eyes, sweetheart. And this time, I won't blink again. I ended the call and sat up straight in my quiet apartment. I was no longer Ava, the nice sister. I was the only one in the family brave enough to break the cycle of lies. And this time, I wasn't just fighting to reclaim assets. I was fighting to reclaim my dignity. I didn't leave my family. I left a battlefield where love was always traded for sacrifice, and kindness was seen as obligation. 3 months after that fateful confrontation, I began to truly live. No more tense dinners with watchful eyes. No more sarcasm disguised as concern. Just me, my own sky, and the sound of wood knocking in my workshop. The only sound that reminded me I was still whole. I rented a larger studio near Lake Calhoun. By day, I designed and built interiors for small homes. At night, I wrote down my bitter experiences and submitted essays to a site dedicated to women rebuilding their lives after betrayal. One day, I received a letter from a woman named Lisa. Ava, I read your story. I was also cast out by my family, but thanks to you, I no longer feel weak. I sat still in front of the screen. Not out of surprise, but because I understood that feeling more than anyone else. Being hurt by someone who shares your last name is a pain hard to name, but overcoming it, that's a strength no one can take away. That weekend, I invited my dad for a walk around the lake. He was no longer the man who sat in his office all day. He had learned to ask me, "Are you doing okay?" without giving hollow advice. We didn't talk about the past. We didn't need to. We rebuilt everything from scratch, with honesty and the silence that listens. One early spring morning, I stood on my balcony, coffee in hand, watching sunlight fall across my latest blueprint. It was a small wooden house, 3 rooms, a simple sloped roof, and reclaimed wood flooring. I named it the Haven. I didn't plan to sell it. I would build every wall, every beam, every brick, myself. And when it was done, I would move in and bring with me everything I had left. Peace, self-respect, and the wisdom earned from the days I survived torment and still rose. In a meeting with my lawyer, he asked, Ava, are you sure you want to settle the case for $120,000, 0 cents? I looked him in the eye. I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing it so they understand. No one has the right to treat others as tools, as stepping stones for their goals. He nodded, eyes filled with respect. That night, I wrote a line in my journal. I no longer hate them, but I will never give them the chance to hurt me again. A few months later, just as the new house was nearing completion, I received an invitation to speak at a conference on women in construction. I stood on stage, mic in hand, in front of hundreds. No fancy words, no dramatics. My name is Ava. I was once called a failure, once seen as a burden in my own family. But today, I don't speak as a victim. I am a survivor. Someone who rebuilt herself from the rubble others left behind. And if I could do it, so can you. The room stood in applause. Some cried, some nodded in silent recognition. And I smiled. Not for praise, not for validation, but because I knew I had truly come back to life. Ava's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes those who hurt us the most are the ones we share blood with. But betrayal isn't the end. When we stand up, set boundaries, and protect ourselves, we don't just reclaim justice. We reclaim our worth. Ava isn't a victim. She is proof of the strength of a woman who knew when to say enough and rebuilt her life with steady hands and a fearless heart. What do you think about Ava's journey? Have you ever experienced betrayal by someone close? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more emotional family stories and powerful life lessons.